China and South Africa have agreed to establish a business council. This will facilitate trade between the two countries. But to speak to us about the meeting today, Business Forum, I have the Minister in the Presidency. Minister, how will you describe the meeting today?
Actually, it's meetings, Sophie. The first one was the Business Forum, which the businesses were exchanging ideas in terms of how they cooperate. And I must indicate the government of China has allowed South African businesses that are in China to establish their own chamber of business. Ordinarily, we do not meet the threshold of the number of companies invested here to have our own chamber of business, South African chamber of business. Like you know, in South Africa, you'll have an American chamber of business and South African American Chamber of Business, but they've given an exemption to us, given the level of the relationship and its elevation to a higher, to a strategic level by their president, and that has strengthened the ability of South Africans to invest in China and also to have lessons as they invest, because the companies that are here, you know, Naspers is here through Tencent, I can name others that are already here. So it will be more lessons and support and a chain for South African companies to come here, because we also want our companies to be global. But we also have the engagement of the Business Forum was also about how do the Chinese companies partner with these businesses that are here to establish business relationships as they invest in South Africa. And just before I came down, we had just concluded a meeting led by the president with the 16 top Chinese companies. They were articulating what are the opportunities for them in South Africa, what they can do in South Africa. Some of them were indicating they're already in South Africa. For instance, your Hisense is already in South Africa, Goshen is already in South Africa, and they were talking about the pace of the development and how busy that market is, because Chinese companies want to position themselves for the African free trade area as already agreed, and they see South Africa as a hub for that investment. So we are positioning ourselves to be a hub, and they were very appreciative that we are more than 160 days without load shedding, and they were saying they have capacity for in the renewable energy spaces. They want to strengthen our ability to make sure that we've got cheaper energy and cheaper electricity for our people, but position South Africa as a manufacturing hub. So you're going to see a lot of investments into South Africa because of the Africa Free Trade Area, and the local content requirement, percentage requirements. So South Africa is not going to be a port of entry for completed goods or semi-completed goods. It's going to be a manufacturing center, and that's what we have just concluded the discussion in. The president is currently meeting with the delegation, with the South African component of the delegation, in terms of what have they found in terms of the engagement as we prepare the business delegation to then participate in FOCAC. What are those things that we need to unlock? But I will not do justice to this conversation if I don't talk about one of the agreements that were signed. You know, we signed many agreements between South Africa and China, as witnessed by the two presidents. The agreement that which was done from the 6th administration and moved over now to be finalized now, because we didn't have a state visit to sign, the agricultural agreement on the protocols of food and mouth disease. That agreement is a major milestone for us. Why is it important? Is because South Africa is one of the largest exporters of beef, and therefore our exports to the external market was severely hampered by the presence of foot and mouth. So if Limpopo was affected by foot and mouth, nobody in the country could export beef. But China have just said no. If you managing foot and mouth in particular area, you can export beef to China, the biggest market. We are hoping that that agreement is a trendsetter, and other countries will follow to sign similar agreements. And even in that level, if a province like Limpopo, which sometimes has foot and mouth disease, if the foot and mouth disease is in Mbembe, then the Waterberg and Skukune and Capricorn and Mupan can continue to export. That is major, and it's a call out to African and South African farmers, AFASA, get ready for the export market in China. The Department of Agriculture, both nationally and in your provinces, they are available to support you to do the export.
Minister, the other issue, when I spoke to Gloria Serobe, the Wiphold CEO, who is also involved in agriculture, she spoke about the issue of tariffs. Are you going to look at that?
Yes, it was raised. We are going to look at it, but we need to recall that Chinese products are very competitive with the tariffs. So the problem is that when we get them to lift the tariffs on our end, we'll have to lift the tariffs on the other side. So the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition will have to look at the pros and cons of lifting those tariffs and getting the workarounds. And we're hoping, when you've got a richer cousin like China we can say, can you lift tariffs and allow us to keep tariffs for you so that you don't murder or massacre our markets. So we are hoping for those discussions, but that has come out sharply, and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition have really committed to do work on that. It came out before we even came here. It was part of those discussions. We readied ourselves for that.
And tomorrow, a big one, the forum for China-Africa cooperation.
Yes, it is a big one, but of course we are the big sister. I don't know whether big brother works. The big sister is much better. So we are the big sister, and we have done. That's why we as President Xi indicated, for the state visits, he had 6 state visits. He first met with us because of the significance of South Africa in the relationship of China with Africa. And we are also, because of our own history, we have a responsibility to make sure we work in the interest not only of South Africa, but of the whole continent of Africa. And that's why we have insisted the local content dynamic and provisions that protect the manufacturing. You should recall, Sophie and the viewers, that Africa is going to be the largest market in the next 7 years, I think, to 2030. We are going to be the largest market. But also Africa is the one that still has land, that still has water, that still has a lot of resources that the world needs. So we need to position ourselves to be better than China and the rest of them. And if you recall, 20, 30 years ago, China was coming to South Africa for lessons on how to do certain things. But look where they are today. So we are also taking lessons, and the African continent tomorrow will be taking lessons, and we'll go back and say, how do we get this right? We've spoken about mineral beneficiation, that we no longer want to be exporting rock and dust out of the continent. We want to beneficiate, and that cannot be possible if South Africa operates alone. Botswana has done it with diamond, but it's not making an impact because others were still exporting rock. So we need to say, how do we partner, how do we support initiatives such as those of Botswana and other countries? How does South Africa and DRC, for example, work on the platinum group of minerals and make sure that we can get real value instead of getting the pittance that we get through the export of raw material?